The Battle of Kumsong, also known as the Jincheng Campaign, was one of the last battles of the Korean War. During the ceasefire negotiations seeking to end the Korean War, the United Nations Command and Chinese and North Korean forces were unable to agree on the issue of prisoner repatriation. South Korean President Syngman Rhee, who refused to sign the armistice, released 27,000 North Korean prisoners who refused repatriation. This action caused an outrage among the Chinese and North Korean commands and threatened to derail the ongoing negotiations. As a result, the Chinese decided to launch an offensive aimed at the Kumsong salient. This would be the last large-scale Chinese offensive of the war, scoring a victory over the UNC forces. Chapter 1, Background. The Chinese People's Volunteer Army and the Korean People's Army objective was the bulge in the US 8th Army lines that began roughly about 3 miles northeast of Kumhwa, extended northeast to the hills south of Kumsong, leveled off to the east for about 10 miles, then dipped to the southeast for some 13 miles to the village of Mundung-ni, northwest of Heartbreak Ridge. Since the terrain was very rough, ranging from hills 400 to 600 meters high in the west to somewhat over 1,000 meters at the eastern end of the bulge, the Republic of Korea Army troops defending the sector had great difficulty in maintaining lateral lines of communication. 5 ROK divisions manned positions in the bulge, with the ROK Capital Division of the US 9 Corps on the left flank, the 6th, 8th and 5th Infantry Divisions of the ROK 2 Corps in the center, and the ROK 20th Infantry Division of the US X Corps on the right. The ROK 3rd Infantry Division was 2 Corps Reserve. Facing the ROK forces were 3 PVA armies. During the early days of June they had brought in the 68th Army and placed it between the 60th and 67th Armies. In addition, the Chinese had strengthened the 60th Army by attaching to it the 33rd Division. Thus, the PVA had available for the attack on the bulge 4 new divisions that had been training on a similar type of terrain in the rear. Chapter 2, Battle. Chapter 2 Section 1, Initial Assault. For the first 10 days of June the PVA/KPA had been deceptively quiet on the Central Front. Then, on the evening of the 10th of June, the artillery fire became intense and the PVA followed up with coordinated attacks ranging from a battalion to a regiment in strength on the sector held by the ROK 5th Division. Using elements of both the PVA 68th and 60th Armies, the PVA began to build up the pressure. Smashing through the outposts, the PVA seized hills 973 and 882, 10 miles northwest of Heartbreak Ridge and part of the main line of resistance. ROK 2 Corps quickly released the 22nd Regiment of the ROK 3rd Division to the operational control of the ROK 5th Division to redress the PVA inroads on the 11th of June. Elements of the ROK 35th Regiment counterattacked to recapture Hill 973, but were only partially successful. PVA units swiftly moved to the offensive again and forced the ROK troops to pull back 1,000 meters, south of Hill 973. 2 battalions of the 22nd Regiment attempted to regain Hill 882 that same day and were able to approach the crest and dig in. Using the 22nd, 27th and 35th Regiments to launch counterattacks on the 12th of June, the ROK 5th Division was unable to drive the Chinese off the hills. Heavy artillery, mortar, and small arms fire, coupled with the PVA's willingness to reinforce his units and counterattack the ROK assault forces, prevented the UNC troops from recouping their terrain losses. 466 to 7 The Chinese broadened the pressure upon the ROK 2 Corps on the 12th of June by attacking elements of the ROK 8th Division on the left flank of the ROK 5th Division. In the Capitol Hill sector, 6 miles northwest of Hill 973, which was defended by the 21st Regiment, the PVA used 2 companies initially, reinforced later with 3 more, and penetrated first the outposts and then the main line positions of the regiment. 2 battalions of the ROK 10th Regiment moved up to counterattack early on the morning of the 13th of June, but were unable to restore the original line. Another PVA attack by an estimated 2 companies during the afternoon forced the abandonment of a company outpost and further withdrawal by the ROC forces. The next morning the Chinese continued the offensive, employing several companies to sustain pressure against the 21st Regiment. Although the ROC units fought off these drives, disaster struck on the evening of the 14th of June. First, a reinforced battalion enveloped the 3rd Battalion of the 21st, causing it to break up into small groups fighting independently to regain UNC lines. 2 PVA companies then hit the main line positions of the 1st Battalion and forced it to pull back. A third attack by a reinforced battalion succeeded in enveloping the 2nd Battalion. Assembling behind the lines, the remnants of the 21st managed to establish a new main line of resistance that was to prove short-lived. On the right flank of the ROC 5th Division, the ROC 20th Division of US X Corps, guarding the sector known as Christmas Hill, 4 miles southeast of Hill 882, had also been subjected to attack. On the 10th of June 2 companies from the PVA 33rd Division captured a company outpost on the approaches to Hill 1220, part of the Christmas Hill area. The ROC 61st Regiment counterattacked, re-won, and then re-lost the outpost. Further action to regain the position was suspended as the gravity of the situation on the ROC 5th Division front increased. When the PVA showed that they intended to retain possession of Hills 973 and 882, which were located on the main ridge leading to Hill 1220 from the west, the ex-Corps commander, Lieutenant General Isaac D. White, moved up the ROC 7th Infantry Division, the Corps Reserve, and placed it on the left flank of the ROC 20th Division. While the ROC 7th Division was advancing north, the 61st Regiment made several efforts to relieve some of the pressure on the ROC 5th Division. The Chinese reacted quickly and managed to blunt each attack. 467 On the 14th of June the PVA 33rd Division renewed the offensive against the ROC 5th and 20th Divisions and forced the former to fall back south of the Pukan River. This withdrawal exposed the flank of the ROC 7th Division, which had just reached its defensive lines. The Chinese this time failed to reorganize their attacking force quickly enough. Ex-Corps artillery and 5th Air Force close air support were concentrated on the PVA units facing the ROC 5th Division, while the ROC 7th readjusted its front-line positions to tie in with the new ones established by the ROC 5th. On the other flank of the 5th, the ROC 8th Division also had to retreat over 1 mile to tie in its main line of resistance with its sister division on the 15th of June. The 2 remaining regiments of the ROC 3rd Division were ordered on the 15th of June to assume responsibility for the sector east of the 8th Division along the south bank of the Pukan River, where they served to strengthen the left flank of the ROC 5th Division. As the ROC 3rd Division took over its defensive positions, the ROC 22nd Regiment reverted to the control of its parent unit. At the same time the ROC 5th Division was attached to X-Corps, which became responsible for the ground east of the Pukan. X-Corps immediately made efforts to speed supplies and equipment forward to the ROC 5th Division and to replace its personnel losses. Since lateral roads were scarce, 12 H-19 helicopters were allocated to help out and they lifted £250,000 of material forward to the front. On the 16th of June the ROC 11th Division shifted over from the ROC I Corps area to become ROC 2 Corps Reserve, 467 to 8. The action tapered off during the next few days. In the ROC 8th Division territory west of the Pukan on the 16th of June the PVA overran an outpost of the ROC L0th Regiment on Finger Ridge, 2 miles east of Capitol Hill, but the Chinese units broke contact and withdrew that evening. The ROC 21st Regiment repelled several company-sized attacks during the day. Later, aided by the 19th Regiment of the ROC 6th Division, the 21st Regiment mounted a counterattack and the PVA pulled back. 2 PVA companies penetrated the main line positions of the ROC 16th Regiment, 8th Division, southeast of Finger Ridge, but did not attempt to follow up the breakthrough. By the evening of the 16th of June, PVA operations on the 8th Division front had become sporadic. During the next 2 days, the PVA launched several minor assaults on the ROC 20th and 8th Divisions, effecting slight penetrations. By the 18th of June the situation began to stabilize and the 8th Army had an opportunity to survey the damage of the 9-day offensive. 468 The PVA had driven the ROC forces back an average of 3 kilometers along a 13 kilometers front and in the process had taken over a series of hill positions east of the Pukan River. As a result of the Chinese drive, 3 ROC divisions had been redeployed in reinforcing and counter-attacking roles. During the action the ROC units had taken a total of over 7,300 casualties, while PVA losses were estimated at over 6,600. In close support of the UNC Defense, Air Force, Navy and Marine aircraft had flown 810 sorties in the 9-day period and the Strategic Air Program had been delayed, 468. Chapter 2 Section 2, Interregnum. The UNC had spent the quiet period reorganizing the battered ROC 5th Division and by the 26th of June the division was judged ready for action once again and control was returned to ROC 2 Corps. In the meantime the ROC 7th Division had taken over the ROC 20th Division's positions on the right flank of the ROC 5th Division. During the night of the 26th of June the PVA 179th Division of the 60th Army dispatched one regiment against elements of the ROC 5th Division east of the Pukan River and a second regiment against units of the ROC 7th Division on the main ridge leading to Hill 1220. Heavy artillery and mortar fire accompanied the attacks and the PVA pressed on vigorously despite a staunch defense by both ROC divisions. As the ROC 5th stubbornly gave ground and retreated to the next terrain line, the ROC 7th also had to pull back to protect its left flank. The PVA pressed on and managed to penetrate the ROC 7th's positions on Hill 938, just northwest of Hill 1220. For several days the ROC 7th counterattacked to regain Hill 938, but the PVA refused to yield possession. The PVA held the hill with a small force and permitted the ROC troops to move in, then directed heavy artillery and mortar fire on the area and counterattacked in mass. After several experiences along this line and study of the growing list of ROC casualties, General White shifted to a policy of containment on the 3rd of July. Terrain to the rear was readied for defense and helicopters rushed up materials and ammunition to prepare the new fortifications for further attacks. The Chinese made 2 attempts on the 4th of July to move in closer to Hill 1220, but the ROC 7th Division fought off both of these assaults, 471-2. The intensification of PVA operations and the reports from intelligence sources that the PVA intended to launch a major offensive in the ROC 2 Corps USX Corps sectors, with the Fakon Reservoir as the objective, led General White to redeploy his forces in an effort to buttress the right flank of the ROC 2 Corps. Beginning on the 1st of July he sent the U.S. 45th Infantry Division westward to relieve the ROC 20th Division and one regiment of the ROC 7th Division. The latter became responsible for a smaller segment of the front and was placed under ROC 2 Corps. On the 10th of July the ROC 20th Division relieved the U.S. 40th Infantry Division in the Heartbreak Ridge area, and the 40th Division displaced west, to strengthen the right flank of the 45th Division. X-Corps was also reinforced by the movement of the U.S. 5th Regimental Combat Team from 9 Corps on the 1st of July. While X-Corps was shifting its forces, the action on the Corps front subsided to a level that did not interfere with the redeployment. To bolster the rear areas and the security of the prisoner of war camps, in late June the UNC Commander General Mark W. Clark ordered the 24th Infantry Division to prepare for a temporary move from Japan to Korea. The 34th Regimental Combat Team arrived in Korea on the 3rd of July, the 19th Infantry Regiment followed on the 11th of July, and the 21st Infantry Regiment unloaded at Pusan on the 12th of July. 472 In the first days of July the PVA/KPA carried out few attacks in strength, but the 8th Army had no illusions about the future. Reports of troop movements, heavy traffic and stockpiling behind PVA/KPA lines alerted all commanders that they were preparing to strike again in force. PVA counter-reconnaissance, Screens made it difficult to ascertain how much strength the Chinese were massing, but the concentrations were greatest on the central front around Kumsong. The first offensive, however, came in the Chowan rather than in the Kumsong sector. On the 6th of July, elements of the PVA's 73rd Division attacked through the defensive positions of the PVA's 69th Division and struck two ROK 2nd Infantry Division outposts on Arrowhead. For over 30 hours the defenders had to repel the Chinese forces, often at close range. The PVA drew back on the 8th of July to regroup, but that night they returned in the wake of 6,500 rounds of artillery and mortar fire, and won possession of the north slope of one of the ridges. A ROK counterattack on the 9th of July failed to oust them and action became intermittent. Early on the 11th of July, two ROK companies, in a fight lasting almost 3 hours, forced the PVA to pull back. During the battles for Arrowhead, the ROK commander rotated his assault troops. In the 11th of July encounter he used 4 battalions to exert maximum pressure and to provide a continuous flow of fresh troops. The 6-day struggle for Arrowhead caused over 500 casualties for the ROK 2nd Division, while the estimated Chinese losses were slightly over 750, 472 to 3. A Chinese tank number 215 T-34 from 4th Tank Regiment, 2nd Tank Division, allegedly destroyed 4 enemy tanks and damaged another M46 Patton tank during its fight from 6th to 8th of July, 1953. It also destroyed 26 bunkers, 9 artillery pieces, and a truck. That tank is now preserved in the Military Museum of the Chinese People's Revolution. Chapter 2 Section 3, Renewed Assault. By evening of the 13th of July the PVA had moved elements of 5 armies into attack at the support positions along the central sector that encompassed the Kumsong salient. Facing them from west to east lay the ROK 9th and Capital Divisions of US 9 Corps and the ROK 6th, 8th, 3rd and 5th Divisions of ROK 2 Corps. The increase in the tempo of artillery and mortar fire on the 13th of July corroborated earlier intelligence reports from prisoners, deserters, agents and reconnaissance that the PVA were about to launch a major drive aimed primarily at ROK units on the central front. After darkness descended, the PVA forces moved forward en masse. A reinforced regiment from the 72nd Division of the 24th Army struck the ROK 9th Division's right flank, while the 203rd Division of the 68th Army smashed into the ROK Capital Division guarding the left shoulder of the Kumsong Bulge. ROK outposts were overrun as wave after wave of Chinese joined the assault. By midnight, PVA units had penetrated the main line of resistance up to 1,000 meters in some places. In the Sniper Ridge sector, long a bone of contention, ROK forces had to pull back to avoid being cut off. Throughout the night the pressure continued, with huge expenditures of artillery and mortar fire from both sides. In the ROK 6th Division area adjacent to the Capital Division, 4 battalions from the PVA 204th Division hit a company-sized outpost of the ROK 19th Regiment. By the morning of the 14th of July, they had penetrated the main line positions of the regiment and surrounded one friendly battalion. Elements of the 204th Division moved through the ROK 6th Division sector and then swung to the west and joined in the attack upon the Capital Division. To the east the PVA on the 13th of July sent 4 companies to surround an outpost in the ROK 8th Division lines and a battalion against a company outpost in the ROK 3rd Division area on the right shoulder of the Kumsong salient. They also attacked the ROK 5th and 7th Divisions to keep them occupied while the main assault was in progress. By the morning of the 14th of July the pattern of the PVA attack had developed as they increased the pressure on the ROK 3rd Division. Battalion and 2 battalion attacks accompanied by heavy artillery and mortar support broke through the ROK 3rd Division's outpost system and drove into the main line positions. The 22nd and 23rd Regiments received assault after assault, but with the aid of the 18th Regiment in blocking positions managed to hold on. Then 4 PVA companies filtered in through the adjacent ROK 5th Division sector and swung in behind the 23D Regiment. When the indication of a double envelopment became apparent, the ROK 3rd Division began to pull back, 474-5 as the PVA pierced the ROC lines along the Central Front and cut off units from their parent organizations, the situation became confused. Soldiers from the 6th, 8th and Capital Divisions found themselves defending strongpoints together. Lateral and front-to-rear lines of communications were soon out of commission, and radio and foot messengers became the chief means of sending and receiving instructions and information. Sister regiments were often out of contact and unaware of what the other was doing. Reports trickling in from the front were often delayed and usually incomplete, as the ROC commanders displayed their customary unwillingness to forward unfavorable news that would cause them to lose face. Despite the lack of details, it was apparent after the first day of the assault that the PVA's use of major elements of 6 divisions had made serious inroads in the ROC capital and 3rd Division's sectors. Since these guarded the shoulders of the salient, the ROC 6th and 8th Divisions were in danger of having their flanks exposed to a double envelopment. 8th Army Commander General Maxwell D. Taylor therefore, on the 14th of July ordered the ROC capital, 6th, 8th, 3rd and 5th Divisions to fall back south of the Kumsong River line at the base of the bulge. This would straighten out the defensive line and shorten the front to be covered. In the process of complying with Taylor's instructions, however, the ROC commanders lost contact with and control of some of their units, with the result that many of them did not stop at the Kumsong line. Instead they continued to retreat farther south, replacing the bulge with a sag in the 8th Army lines. The intensity and determination of the Chinese offensive impressed Generals Clark and Taylor to the point that they decided to fly reinforcements from Japan to Korea to bolster the front. The U.S. 187th Airborne Regimental Combat Team was rushed to Korea, and on the 14th of July Taylor attached the unit to the U.S. 2nd Infantry Division. The latter took over the U.S. 3rd Infantry Division's positions, and the 187th RCT relieved elements of the ROC 9th Division, permitting the ROC forces to narrow their front, and to strengthen the left flank of the retreating Capital Division. In the meantime, the U.S. 3rd Infantry Division shifted over into blocking positions behind the Capital Division to stem the PVA advance. As the Capital's units fell back, they passed through the 3rd Infantry Division, and were reorganized and rehabilitated in the rear. On the 15th of July the 3rd Infantry Division took over responsibility for the Capital Division's sector and assumed operational control of the division. In the ROC 2 Corps area, Taylor released the ROC 11th Division to the Corps commander, Lieutenant General Chung Il-kwon, who dispatched the division forward to relieve the ROC 3rd Division. The ROC 6th Division was also withdrawn from the line and, along with the ROC 3rd Division, was reorganized and reconstituted. Thus, on the 15th of July, the 8th Army had the ROC 9th, the U.S. 3rd with the remnants of the Capital Division, the ROC 11th, 8th, and 5th Divisions on the front lines from west to east to check the PVA offensive. 475-6 on the 16th of July ROC 2 Corps received orders to counterattack and restore the Kumsong River line. The PVA offensive had slowed by this time, and the Chinese were organizing the defense of the terrain they had taken and replacing the heavy casualties they had suffered in breaking through the ROC positions. The ROC 11th, 8th and 5th Divisions, attacking abreast, launched the counter-offensive the same day. Against variable PVA opposition they edged forward toward the Kumsong River east of Kumwa. Between 16 and 19 July the 3 divisions, with the 6th, 3rd and 7th ROC Divisions in blocking positions in reserve, attained the high ground south of the river. On the 19th of July the ROC 6th Division passed through the 5th Division and assumed responsibility for its sector. Efforts to cross the river and take defensive positions on the north bank of the Kumsong met with increasing PVA resistance and were abandoned after the 20th of July. 476. Chapter 3, Aftermath. For the last week of the war the ROC 2 Corps held the Kumsong River line against minor PVA pressure. Despite the gains of the counteroffensive, the Chinese had removed the Kumsong salient, and straightened out their lines on the central front. Their penetration had been approximately 6 miles and the weight of their assault had cut off and disorganized many of the ROK units facing them. It had taken 9 ROK and US divisions in blocking and counterattacking roles to halt the Chinese advance and to regain some of the lost terrain. The Chinese loudly proclaimed military victory for its side. On the other hand, the price that the PVA had paid to sustain a major drive was extremely high. The 8th Army estimated that over 28,000 casualties had been inflicted upon the PVA during their breakthrough and its aftermath. While ROK 2 Corps was carrying out its counteroffensive, the PVA/KPA exerted pressure upon several scattered points along the 8th Army line in an effort to take long contested hills and outposts prior to the signing of an armistice. The reasons behind this pressure were difficult to fathom, since all of the threatened points fell in the demilitarized zone and would have to be abandoned by the UNC forces anyway. As it turned out, the PVA/KPA had to surrender possession of their new gains shortly thereafter. The operations along the front during the last week of the Korean War subsided again to small-scale probes and patrols, as each side now anticipated that the Korean Armistice Agreement soon would be signed. 476 General Clark later commented, "There is no doubt in my mind that one of the principal reasons, if not the one reason, for the communist offensive was to give the ROKs a bloody nose, to show them and the world that Puch-Chin, go north, was easier said than done." 477. Chapter 4, In the Media. The 2020 film The Sacrifice is set during the Battle of Kumsong and tells the story of a bridge that the Chinese People's Volunteer Army must defend in order to reinforce the front line, while the United States Air Force and artillery attempt to halt the crossing.